That was by foot. That was 4,000 kilometers. And the other one was from Manipur, which, as you know, is burning, to Maharashtra.
Right. You've already sort of answered this, but I still want to ask, what inspired you to take these journeys?
Well, I mean, at one level, we were forced politically to take, because all the instruments that normally work in a democracy, they just were not working. And, you know, the media was not working, the courts were not working, nothing was working. And so we said, okay, let's go direct, and we went, and it worked. It worked beautifully. That was at the political level and at my work level. But as a at the individual private level, I always wanted to do it. I always wanted, since I was small, since I was young, I always had this idea that I must, at some point in my life, walk across my country and see what it's about.
Well, what an experience, and what a marvelous thing to do. So as leader of the opposition in the Lok Sabha, how do you perceive your role evolving compared to your previous responsibilities? And what new challenges or opportunities do you foresee in this position?
I mean, it's an extension of what I did earlier. There's an ideological war taking place in India between the Congress and our partners and the BJP and the RSS. They are two completely different visions of India. We believe in a plural vision, a vision where everybody has a right to thrive. All imaginations are free to roam. An India where you're not persecuted because of what religion you believe in, or what community you come from, or which language you speak, versus a much harsher, centralizing vision. And so that's the landscape. And then, you know, we fight on that landscape. Defend India's institutions, defend the weaker sections in India, defend the lower castes, defend the tribals, minorities, defend poor people. And after the yatra, I feel try to become the voice of as many people as you can. You know, so for that you have to go and understand what's going on. You have to go deep into sort of the agricultural world, the conflicts that are taking place there, into the financial system, into the tax system. So you have to, in a sense, go deep into it, talk to people, and then understand deeply what they're saying, and then transmit it.
Right.
So and at a broader level, provide a vision, India Alliance vision for the country, which is obviously going to be fundamentally different than the centralizing, you know, monopolized vision that the BJP is presenting.
Okay, so you touched upon a couple of points. You just mentioned finance and the tax system. You spoke this morning that 17 secretaries take all financial decisions to run the country.
No, 70.
70, okay. I'm sorry, 70. Apparently, only 3 of them are Dalits, and only 1 is a member of the minority. Now, all of them are...
Well, you've got the numbers wrong, but...
Okay.
But
this is from the audience.
Let's put it that 90% of India
okay.
Is either tribal, lower caste, or Dalit, right, or minority. And their participation in the governance of the country, in the various institutions of the country, in the media of the country is lacking. And so what we propose is a survey to make transparent the reality of how power is shared in India.
The caste census.
The caste census.
Okay. But just to stay on the same topic, all the secretaries are from the administrative service, correct? Now, the US Treasury has economists, the UK Treasury recruits people separately with expertise in economic policy making. But the Indian Finance Ministry is the domain of IAS officers. of which very few understand finance. Will you professionalize the finance ministry, liberate it from IAS officers who criticize it, and appoint a Dalit scholar like B.R. Ambedkar as
No, I think that look, the problem is much broader than that. Okay, the problem is about participation of weaker sections of lower castes, in particular Dalits, across the board, right? So I'll shock you by saying that if you were to look at the top 200 corporates in India, and you were to look at their management teams, and you were to look at their CEOs, you wouldn't find anybody from the lower caste, right? You'd find only people from the upper caste. Same with the Indian media. If you look at media, you'd find that it's the preserve of upper castes. You look at the influencers on social media, you look at the big columnists, you look at the people who control the media infrastructure. Again, it's the same issue, right? So there is a very small percentage of India which is controlling the entire infrastructure. What you're proposing doesn't actually solve that problem.
No, not proposing, I'm just asking.
Yeah, what you're asking doesn't actually solve that problem. That problem is a much broader problem, and it's the first step in understanding that problem is actually in understanding what the reality is. So what is the participation of lower castes, of tribals, of Dalits in, for example, the corporate world? What is the participation in the media? What is the participation in our bureaucracy? The point I made about the secretaries is that if you look at the Indian government, 70 secretaries basically determine the direction of it, right? And I made this point again and again in the election that 90% of India doesn't have representation among those people.
Okay,
right?
Just as a follow-up, a lot of government posts are lying vacant, and many government agencies are actually hiring people through contract and not as direct hires.
Exactly.
So then how can you ensure?
Well, we propose to change that.
You propose to change
So
that?
in our manifesto, we're very clear that this idea of contractual labor, we don't accept it. We're going to change it.
Right, and many agencies are doing that to also reduce their overhead because of government expenditure.
Yes, but that's true. Some of that is happening, but a huge part of it is happening to basically exclude people from lower castes. Because when you look at who are the contractors, they're not lower caste people, right? So the question for me and for the India Alliance is India fair? And we've been now independent for many years. How far have we got? We have a constitution that says India needs to be a fair country. One man, one vote, equal participation for all castes. As an idea, caste is outlawed. And then when you look at the structure, the idea is very much there. So the first thing we want to understand is what is the extent to this? And that's literally getting data. It's the 21st century. Everybody talks about data. We want data on fairness in India.
All right.
And once we get data on fairness in India, then we can make policy proposals to correct it.
Right. Okay, so India's biggest problem is also unemployment,
Yeah.
right? So what is your vision, and especially what is your government doing, say in Karnataka, to create large-scale employment opportunities?
So I've been saying here in the United States that the West, America, Europe, and India, the West used to be the producer of the world. If you wanted to buy a car in the 60s, you bought an American car. You wanted to buy a washing machine, you wanted to buy a refrigerator, you bought an American refrigerator, you bought an American washing machine, American television. You guys were at the forefront of that, right? And then somewhere along the line, America decided, India decided, and the West decided that we're just going to stop. And we handed the whole thing to the Chinese. Now, for a country like India, to simply say that, look, we are going to ignore manufacturing and we're only going to run a services economy, means you can't give employment to your people, right? So one of the things I'm interested in is thinking about the act of production, also called manufacturing. Today, if you look at what most American companies do. Look at what most Indian companies, most European countries do. They organize consumption. Uber organizes consumption. Organizing consumption is easy. Organizing production is a completely different ballgame, much more complicated. You have to deal with things when you organize production that you simply don't have to deal with when you organize consumption. So to me, there's a huge opportunity for India and the United States to regain that ability to produce. Right? And we don't want to do it like the Chinese are doing it. We don't want to do it in an environment which is non-democratic, which is not liberal. So the real question for the 21st century, the Chinese have placed a production vision on the table. It's a non-democratic production vision. Can the United States and India answer that by placing a vision for production in a democratic, free society?
Okay.
And I think that's where a lot of answers lie.
All right.
Now, to complete, we have a government in Karnataka, we have a government in Telangana, and what we're doing is there are multiple different areas. Each area in India has its own speciality of production, right? If you go to pretty much any district, Bellary in Karnataka has a very deep textile industry which has been destroyed. So we are looking at these pockets of excellence and then trying to bring modern technology, financial support to build them. So the vision would be more of a decentralized production system. Unlike China, which is huge factories, we would be thinking about smaller and small medium businesses and embedding modern technology into that. We're testing some of these ideas in Karnataka and Telangana.
Right, and then you'll roll it out to...
That's generally how we operate.
Okay. All right, so while we touched upon India and the U.S., the India-U.S. nuclear deal led by Prime Minister Manmohan Singh was a landmark step in India-U.S. bilateral relations. What do you see as the long-term prospects for India-U.S. relations, especially in terms of strategic partnerships? You've touched upon it a little bit, but if you could elaborate.
So there are two elements. The first is the defense cooperation, which is important, and I think we do a good job there. But then the second is what I touched on just now, which is China has placed in front of us a vision for production and prosperity in a non-democratic environment. Right? What is our response? Are we simply going to just sit there and say, okay, China can be the producer of the world and we're not going to do anything? Or do we have a response? What is our response to the Belt and Road? Right? I don't see one. So to me, that's really where US and India cooperation needs to go. How can we provide a democratic vision of production or manufacturing that actually works to the rest of the world? And I think both countries bring different things to the table. And I think there's a huge opportunity there.
Okay. So just staying on India and U.S., is there a political consensus within India on deepening strategic ties with the U.S.?
Yes, I mean, I don't see a big diversion. You know, I don't see Mr. Modi diverting very much from our approach with the U.S., and I don't see ourselves changing direction very much from what he's doing. So I see continuity there. I think everybody on both sides of the equation, everybody does accept the fact that the India-US relationship is key for both countries.
Okay. One more on the U.S. With the backdrop of an increasingly assertive China, the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict, and the crisis in Gaza, how do you view the role of the United States in global affairs?
I think you're a very powerful democracy. You believe in certain ideas on freedom, on democratic participation, and I think that's important for the world. I don't like a world where democracy were to disappear, were to weaken, right? So I think there you have a very important role to play. But standing on this side, I see challenges coming that, frankly, you've not faced before. And I don't think it's going to be that easy. The central question is, how do you challenge China on production and value addition, right? China's strength comes from that. Yes, China has a strong military, but the military strength comes from that ability to produce. It comes from Americans buying Chinese product. It comes from Indians buying Chinese product. And what are you going to do about it? Because we can't carry on this trajectory. Certainly I can talk for India. We simply cannot go forward without building a manufacturing base, without involving large numbers of our people, creating jobs for them. So for us, it's, we're not a Singapore where we can say, now we'll do services and everything will be fine. We can't do it. We have over 1 billion people, and we have to give them an answer. And that answer can only come from production.
Okay. One on national security. With India facing complex security challenges, particularly along its external borders, with 2 hostile nuclear-armed neighbors, as seen in incidents like Galwan in 2020, what's your perspective on ensuring a comprehensive national security policy? How should India navigate this volatile geopolitical environment? And you've spoken about
very carefully.
You've spoken about the Ladakh border
without
before.
making too many mistakes. No, I think, look, the world is changing. There's a huge increase in China's power. China is our neighbor. We have a relationship with the United States. So we are right in the middle of all this geopolitical change. And so we have to have a long-term vision, strategic vision, and it shouldn't be one tactical move after another tactical move. It should be, okay, this is how we're thinking about it for the long term. This is the basic foundation, and we're going to walk on this path. I think the central elements of that, from our perspective, have to be the democratic idea. Have to be the central ideas that our freedom fighters and Mahatma Gandhi and others fought for, which is peace, non-violence, cooperation, harmony.
All right, but it's difficult to do with an aggressive neighbor.
Yeah, but India's pretty smart at doing these type of things. I mean, we can maneuver. I'm confident about that. But it's important that to do this properly, you have to have a very good sense of who you are and what your own nature is.
Right.
And that's where I don't agree with the current dispensation. When you imagine yourself to be something you're not, that's when the problems come, right? India is a very plural country. India is an open country. India is not one idea. India is multiple ideas. And when you imagine yourself to be something you're not, that's when all your strategic problems start.
Okay. So I've just gotten a bunch.
I mean, we are weakening our biggest asset, right? Our biggest strategic asset, India's biggest strategic asset, which is our democracy, which is just not India's asset, it is the world's asset, because it's so big. It's a global public good. It's being attacked in India, right? And that is the foundation. That's the foundation of all our strategic imperatives.
Right. So you say, democracy is being attacked, and I've had this conversation with Mr. Pitroda, that the Indian voter is very resilient and very knowledgeable. It's not, and if you see the election results, does it give you more hope for democracy in India?
It does. Look, but
Okay.
It's not good enough to say that the Indian voter is resilient and knowledgeable, because the Indian voter is informed by a whole set of structures, right? So if we don't have a level playing field, the voter might be very knowledgeable and well, and resilient. It doesn't really matter. We fought an election with our bank accounts frozen. Right now, I don't know. I mean, I don't know any democracy where that's happened. Maybe that type of thing happens in Syria or used to happen in Iraq. But we literally sat during our election and spoke to our treasurer, and he says, well, we have no money. Right? Now, you can have a resilient voter. You still need to run campaigns. You still need to have conversations. You still need to have meetings. Right? I've got 20 plus cases with me. I'm the only person in Indian history to get a prison sentence for defamation. Right? We have a chief minister who's in jail right now. So, I mean, one way of saying it is, yes, the Indian voter is very resilient, and he stands